Welcome to Chapter 13, Statistics. When data is too large to list, we group it into class intervals and describe the whole crowd with a single central number. You'll learn to find the mean of grouped data three ways: the direct method, the assumed mean shortcut, and the step deviation shortcut, then the mode using the model class formula, and the median using cumulative frequency. Finally, you'll draw cumulative frequency curves, called ogives, and read the median straight off the graph. We'll do every insert example and exercise, one gentle step at a time, and finish with exam practice.
In the darkness of the unknown, a stuck student finds their way, the greatest minds, and turn confusion into brilliance.
Here is our data drawn as a histogram. Each bar is one class of values, and its height is the frequency, how many readings landed in that class. So the tall bar in the middle isn't just tall for decoration, it means most of the data crowds there. Now watch what I do. I rest the whole histogram on a single rigid beam, as if each bar were a weight sitting on a plank. Hold that picture, because the average is about to become something you can literally see, not just a formula you memorize. Here's the question that unlocks everything. Where must I place a single pivot, one fulcrum, so this loaded beam sits perfectly level? Think of a seesaw. If I put the pivot too far to the left, all those heavy bars on the right win the tug-of-war and tip it over. The heavier a bar, the harder it pushes down, and the further it sits from the pivot, the more leverage that push has. So the balance point can't ignore either thing, how big each frequency is, or where each class sits. So I slide the pivot slowly across, feeling for the exact spot where the tipping stops and the beam floats dead level. Watch, it settles right here, a little left of center. Pull that way because the taller bars on the left carry more weight. That settling point, where every bar's push is perfectly balanced, is the mean of the data. Not the middle of the axis, the middle of the asterisk weight star. Look at this line through the pivot. Every bar to the left is trying to rotate the beam one way, every bar to the right the other way. And here those turning efforts exactly cancel. That perfect cancellation is what an average really is, the point about which the data's deviations, above and below, sum to zero. We write it as x bar. Now let's turn that picture into symbols, so you see the formula is earned, not handed down. Each class contributes a turning effort equal to its frequency times its position, Fi times xi, and for the beam to balance, the total of those efforts, shared out over the total frequency, has to land at x bar. So x bar equals the sum of Fi times xi, divided by the sum of Fi. Read it as a weighted average. Every class gets a vote. But a class that occurs 8 times pulls 8 times as hard as a class that occurs once. That weighting is the whole idea of the mean, nothing more. Here's the honest problem with the direct method. When the class marks are big, think 510, 530, 550, multiplying each by its frequency by hand is slow and error-prone. So we cheat, but cleverly, in a way that changes nothing about the answer. Pick any convenient class mark, usually one near the middle, and christen it the assumed mean, A. It's just a landmark we choose for our own comfort. Now the clever move. I plant a brand new zero on the ruler right at A. From here on, I don't ask, what is this class mark? I ask, how far is it from A? That distance is the deviation, di equals xi minus A. A class below A gets a negative d, a class above A gets a positive d, and the class sitting on A gets 0. The numbers we now handle are small, single or double digits instead of hundreds. But you might worry, haven't I changed the data by moving zero? Not at all, and this is the key insight. Sliding the origin doesn't touch a single bar, it only relabels the ruler underneath them. The beam still balances at the exact same physical spot. All I've done is measure that spot from a instead of from zero. So the balance point in the new labeling sits a fixed amount away from the same amount by which the whole ruler shifted. Shift the zero, and the mean shifts with it, lockstep. So the recipe writes itself. Find the average of the deviations, the sum of Fi times Di over the total frequency, and add it back onto A. That undoes the shift and lands you on the true mean. Same answer as the direct method, guaranteed, but the arithmetic is featherweight. And there's one more gear. If all the classes share a common with H, divide every deviation by H to get even smaller whole numbers, UI. That's the step deviation method. We've now not just shifted the origin but rescaled the ruler, and at the end we simply multiply back by H and add A, shift, scale, unshift, unscale. The mean never moved, only our bookkeeping got easier. The median asks a different question from the mean. Not, where does the weight balance, but, where does the count split in half? The value with as many readings below it as above. To find that, I stop plotting frequencies and start plotting the running total, the cumulative frequency. This curve is the ogive. Each point on it says, by the time we reach this value on the x-axis, this many readings have piled up beneath us. That's why it only ever climbs, you can never uncount a value, and it flattens where data is sparse and steepens where data is dense, tracing this rising S-shape. Now here's the whole method in one gesture. The total count is n, so half the data is n over 2 readings. I go up the vertical axis to that halfway height and draw a line straight across until it meets the climbing ogive. That meeting point is the moment exactly half the data has accumulated. Drop straight down from there to the x-axis, and where it lands is the value that splits the data into 2 equal halves, the median. And notice asterisk y asterisk, the formula you'll use works. Between grid points the ogive is a straight line, so finding where it crosses n over 2 is just walking a proportion into the median class. That fraction is exactly the n over 2 minus Cf over f term in the formula. The mode answers yet a third question, not the balance, not the middle, but what value happens most often? And that one you can read off the histogram at a glance. It lives inside the tallest bar, the class with the highest frequency. Here that's the third bar, standing head and shoulders above the rest. So the model class is easy. The only subtlety is pinning down the exact value asterisk inside asterisk that class. Now here's the clever bit, and it's genuinely intuitive once you see it. The exact mode is not the middle of the tallest bar. Look at its two neighbors. If the bar on one side is much taller than the bar on the other, the peak of the data is being tugged toward that taller side. The crowd doesn't drop off symmetrically. So we compare the two drops, F1 minus F0 on the left against F1 minus F2 on the right. Wherever the drop is asterisk smaller asterisk, that neighbor is the taller one, and the mode leans that way. That's precisely what the formulas F1 minus F0 over twice F1 minus F0 minus F2 does. It measures how lopsided the peak is and slides the mode into the model class by exactly that fraction of its width. So carry 3 pictures out of here, not 3 formulas. The mean is where the data balances, the center of weight. The median is where the count splits in half. The middle position, read off the ogive at n/2. And the mode is the value that happens most, the tallest bar. And one last gift for the exam. For a moderately skewed distribution, these three are tied together by the empirical relation 3 median equals mode plus 2 mean, because the median always sits about a third of the way from the mode toward the mean. Know any two, and you can recover the third. 3 averages, 3 pictures, 1 relation. Now let's compute them on every example and exercise. Let's walk through all 9 insert examples together, one gentle step at a time, and on each one I'll tell you not just what to do but why it works, so the method sticks instead of the answer. The tables are large, so we'll summarize each computation rather than draw every single row, but every number you see is earned. Keep the histogram and ogive from the concept in mind. That's the picture behind every formula we're about to use. Ungrouped data, the marks are exact values, so we just weight each mark by how many students got it. Let's plan before we compute. Remember, the mean is the balance point of the data, and in symbols that's the sum of Fi times Xi over the sum of Fi. So our whole job is to build one column of Fi times Xi, add it, and divide. A mark that many students scored must count many times over. That's the weighting the formula bakes in. First, the denominator, add up all the frequencies. That total is simply how many students we have, and here it comes to 30, a useful sanity check, since the problem said 30 students. Now the numerator, the real work. Multiply each mark by the number of students who scored it, then add every product. A mark scored by 5 students contributes 5 times, a mark scored by 1, just once. That total of Fi times Xi comes to 1779. Now divide the weighted total by the head count. This is the balance point step, sharing the total marks fairly across all 30 students. Carry out that division and we land on the mean mark, 59.3. Notice it sits inside the range of the actual marks, exactly where you'd expect a balance point to be. So the takeaway, the mean is nothing but a weighted average. Each value tugs on the total in proportion to its frequency, and dividing by the head count finds the point where all those tugs balance. That's the same fulcrum you saw under the histogram. One dataset, 3 routes to the same mean, direct, assumed mean, step deviation. Watch them all land on the same number. Now the data is grouped into intervals, so a class like 15 to 25 has no single value. We represent the whole class by its class mark, the midpoint, because on average the readings inside a class sit around its center. So the first job is to average each pair of limits, 15 and 25 give 20, and so on up the table. Add the frequencies for the total number of states, that's the denominator in every one of the 3 methods, so we only compute it once. 35 states in all. Direct method first, the honest brute force one, multiply each class mark by its frequency and add every product. This is exactly the balance point sum from the concept, done with midpoints. Divide the weighted total by 35 and we get the mean, 39.71. Hold on to that number. The next 2 methods must reproduce it, or we've made a slip. Now the assumed mean shortcut, and here's why we bother. Multiplying by 50s and 60s is clumsy. So we plant a new zero at a convenient middle class mark, equals 50, and measure every class as a deviation from it, di equals xi minus 50. Sliding the origin doesn't move the data at all, it only relabels the ruler. Multiply each of those small deviations by its frequency and add. The numbers are tiny now, plus and minus tens instead of hundreds, and the total comes to minus 360. Because we only shifted the zero, we shift back, add onto the average deviation. 50 plus minus 360 over 35 gives, and this is the reassuring part, exactly 39.71 again. One more gear. All the classes share the same width, 10, so divide every deviation by that width to get even smaller whole numbers, ui. We are now rescaling the ruler as well as shifting it, the deviations become plus and minus 3s and 2s. Multiply each ui by its frequency and add. Arithmetic you can almost do in your head now. The sum of fi ui is minus 36. Finally undo both moves, multiply back by the width h to undo the scaling, then add a to undo the shift. 50 plus 10 times minus 36 over 35 gives 39.71 a third time. 3 roads, 1 destination. So the big lesson, all 3 methods must agree, and they do. The assumed mean and step deviation tricks never change the answer, they only shrink the numbers you juggle. When class marks are large, reach for step deviation and save yourself the heavy multiplication. Big, uneven classes, the step deviation method still tames them, as long as we pick h ourselves. These class marks are huge, up to 400, so the direct method would be a nightmare of big multiplications. Step deviation is the obvious choice. First, the class marks, each the midpoint of its interval, 40, 80, 125, 200, 300, 400. Add the frequencies for the total number of bowlers, 45, the denominator we'll carry through. Now here's a subtlety worth noticing. The classes are unequal in width, so there's no single natural edge. But h is ours to choose, it's just a scaling factor. Pick a convenient middle class mark, equals 200, and a tidy step, h equals 20. Form each ui as the class mark minus a, all divided by h. Even though the classes have different widths, dividing by a common 20 just shrinks every number by the same factor, it rescales, it doesn't distort. Multiply each ui by its frequency and add. The total, minus 106, is negative, a signal that the data leans below our assumed 200. Undo the scaling by multiplying back by h, then undo the shift by adding a, 200 plus 20 times minus 1 or 6 over 45. Work out the correction, about minus 47, and add it to 200. The mean is 152.89 wickets. So on average these bowlers took about 153 wickets each. And the key idea to carry away, step deviation works even when class sizes differ, because ui only stretches or shrinks the ruler by a chosen factor. Since we multiply that same h back at the end, nothing is lost. For a short row list, the mode needs no formula at all, it's simply the most frequent value. The mode is the value that appears most often, so with raw data there's no formula to reach for, we just tally. Count how many times each number shows up. 0 once, 1 once, 2 appears 3 times, 3 twice, and the rest once each. On a histogram, these tallies would be the bar heights. Now scan the counts for the tallest one, the highest frequency. Here it's 3, clearly ahead of everything else. Read off which value carries that peak count. It's 2, the value that occurred 3 times. That's the tallest bar, and so the mode. So remember the distinction. For raw, ungrouped data, the mode is just the value that shows up most often, no formula needed. The mode formula only comes out when the data is grouped and the exact peak is hidden inside a class, which is the very next example. Grouped data hides the exact mode inside a class. The formula digs out where in that class it sits. Now the data is grouped, so we can't just point at a value. The mode lives somewhere inside a class. Step 1 is always to find the model class, the tallest bar, the class with the highest frequency. 8 beats every other count, so 3 to 5 is our model class. Read off the model class's lower limit L and its width H, because the formula measures the mode as a step forward from that lower edge. Here L is 3 and H is 2. Now note 3 frequencies, the model class itself F1, and its 2 neighbors F0 before and F2 after. These 3 heights are what tell us which way the peak leans. F1 is 8, F0 is 7, F2 is 2. Here's the mode formula, and it's not magic. The F1 minus F0 on top measures how much the peak rises above its left neighbor. The denominator measures the total drop on both sides. Their ratio is the fraction of the class width the mode has leaned in by. Substitute our numbers. 8 minus 7 on top, 16 minus 7 minus 2 below. Simplify, 1 over 7 of the class width. Multiply by the width 2, a small step, about 0.29. Add that small step onto the lower limit 3. The mode is 3.286 family members. So notice what the formula did. It nudged the mode away from the lower limit toward whichever neighbor was less lopsided. Here the class after the peak is much lighter than the one before, so the peak barely leans up from 3, exactly the leaning toward the taller neighbor picture from the histogram. Same students, now the mode, then compare it with the mean and see what the gap tells us. Same drill for the mode, find the tallest bar first. The frequency 7 is the greatest, so 40 to 55 is the model class. Read off its lower limit and width. The mode is a step forward from this lower edge. L is 40, and the class width H is 15. Note the peak frequency and its 2 neighbors, since their imbalance decides the lean. F1 is 7, F0 3, F2 6. Substitute into the mode formula. Notice the left neighbor, 3, is much lighter than the right neighbor, 6, so the peak should lean strongly to the left, and the numerator 7 minus 3 is large. Simplify, 4/5 of the class width. 4/5 of 15 is 12, a big lean, just as we predicted from the lopsided neighbors. Add that 12 to the lower limit 40. The mode is 52 marks. Now compare with the mean the problem gave us, 62. The mode sits well below the mean, and that gap is meaningful, not an error. So here's the interpretation, and it's the heart of the chapter. The most typical student scored around 52, but the mean is dragged up to 62 by the heavier high-mark classes. Mode tells you the typical value, mean tells you the balancing point. When they differ like this, the distribution is skewed, and that gap is exactly what the empirical relation measures. Less than data is already cumulative. First rebuild the ordinary frequencies, then locate the middle on the ogive. The table gives less than counts, which are already cumulative, their points on the ogive. But the median formula needs the ordinary class frequencies, the bar heights. To recover each one, subtract each cumulative count from the next. The jump from one running total to the next is exactly how many readings fell in that class. That gives 4, 7, 18, and so on. Confirm the total is 51, then locate the halfway mark. The median is the value with half the girls below it, so we want position n over 2, 25.5 up the cumulative axis. Now walk up the cumulative frequencies until we first pass 25.5, that's where, on the ogive, the curve crosses the halfway line. It happens at cumulative 29, so the median class is 145 to 150. Read off the 4 numbers the formula needs. The median class is lower limit L, its own frequency f, the cumulative frequency Cf of the class just before it, and the width h, that's L145, Cf11, F18, H5. Here's the median formula, and every piece has a meaning. We start at the lower limit L, then walk forward. How far? The fraction n over 2 minus Cf tells us how many more readings we need past the class boundary, and dividing by f spreads them evenly across the class. That's the straight line part of the ogive. Substitute. We've already counted 11 girls before the median class and need to reach 25.5, so we are 14.5 into a class of 18. Simplify the numerator to 72.5 over 18. That's the fraction of the class width, times 5, we step forward. Add that step on to 145. The median height is 149.03 centimeters. So the takeaway, the median formula just walks a proportion into the median class, exactly how far past its lower limit the 25.5th girl falls. It's the algebra of dropping down from n over 2 on the ogive, done without drawing the graph. Median given, frequencies unknown. Run the formula backwards and it becomes a pair of equations. This one's a puzzle in reverse. We're told the median and asked for 2 missing frequencies, x and y, 2 unknowns need 2 equations. The first is free, all the frequencies must add to the total, 100. Adding the known ones gives 76, so 76 plus x plus y equals 100. Tidy that into a clean relation. X plus y equals 24. One equation down, one to go, and the median will give it. The median is 525, and that value sits inside the class 500 to 600, so that's a median class. Read off its lower limit, its frequency, and the width, L500, F20, H100. Now the cumulative frequency just before the median class. Adding the frequencies up to that point leaves an x still in the pile, so Cf is 36 plus x. That unknown is what will carry the information the median gives us. Feed everything into the median formula, but this time we know the median and don't know the frequency. So it becomes an equation in x. N over 2 is 50. CF is 36 plus x. Subtract 500 from both sides to isolate the walk-forward term. The 100 over 20 simplifies to 5, leaving 25 equals 14 minus x, all times 5. Divide both sides by 5 and rearrange. 5 equals 14 minus x, so x is 9. Finally, use our first equation. Put x equals 9 back into x plus y equals 24, and y must be 15. So the trick to remember, a known median is really a fact about the middle position on the ogive. Feeding it into the formula converts that graph fact straight back into ordinary algebra. The median formula runs just as well backwards as forwards. Two ogives crossing on a graph point straight at the median, and the formula confirms it. This example shows the median graphically. An ogive is a cumulative frequency curve, and we'll draw two of them, a more than curve and a less than curve, because the point where they cross reveals the median with no formula at all. There are 30 shops in total. The more than ogive counts down how many shops earn at least this much. Plot the given counts against the lower class limits. 30 shops earn at least 5, 28 at least 10, and so on. This curve falls as you move right. For the less than ogive, we need the ordinary frequencies first. Difference the given counts to see how many shops sit in each band, 2, 12, 2, and so on. Now build the running total the other way, counting up, and plot against the upper limits to shops earn under 10, 14 under 15, and so on. This curve rises as you move right. Join each set of points with a smooth freehand curve. One ogive climbs, one descends, and they must cross somewhere in the middle. Here's the beautiful part. The two curves cross exactly where the number of shops below equals the number above, that's 15 each, n over 2. Drop a perpendicular from that intersection to the x-axis, and the value you read is the median. Let's confirm the graph with a formula so you trust both. N over 2 is 15, which lands in class 15 to 20. Plug in and it gives 17.5, the same value the crossing point shows. So the big idea, the two ogives cross precisely where the cumulative count is n over 2, because that's the one value with equal numbers above and below. That meeting point is a purely graphical median, and it agrees with the formula to the decimal, which is exactly why we trust both. Now let's solve every exercise question, breaking each into small, clear steps, and on every one I'll explain why we pick the method we pick, not just how to grind it. Exercise 13.1 is all about the mean, 13.2 the mode, and 13.3 the median, so you'll get to practice each idea from the concept many times over. The tables are large, so we summarize the arithmetic instead of drawing every row, but keep the histogram and ogive in mind. They're the picture behind every answer. Small class marks, the direct method is the natural choice, no shortcut needed. The question even asks which method and why, so let's reason it out. The class marks here are tiny, single digits, so multiplying by frequencies is easy and the direct method is the natural pick. An assumed mean would save nothing. First find each class mark, the midpoint of its interval, 1, 3, 5, and so on. Add the frequencies for the total number of houses, 20, our denominator. Now the weighted total. Multiply each small class mark by its frequency and add. A class with 6 houses counts 6 times. The sum of products is 162. Divide the weighted total by 20 houses to find the balance point. 162 over 20 is 8.1. So the answer to which method and why is direct, because small class marks make the multiplication painless. Save the assumed mean and step deviation shortcuts for when the numbers turn big and ugly. That's the whole point of choosing a method. Big wage values around 500, assumed mean or step deviation lightens the load dramatically. Now the class marks are around 500. Multiplying those by frequencies directly is asking for arithmetic slips. This is exactly when step deviation earns its keep, and the equal with 20 makes it clean. Start with the class marks 510, 530, up to 590. Choose an assumed mean near the middle, equals 550, and note the common width, h equals 20. Planting the 0 at 550 is what shrinks every number. Form each UI as the class mark minus 550 over 20, small integers like minus 2, minus 1, 0, plus 1, plus 2. Multiply each by its frequency and add. The total of FIUI is minus 24. Add the frequencies for the total, 50 workers. Now unscale and unshift. Multiply back by the width 20, divide by 50, and add a 550 plus 20 times minus 24 over 50. The correction is minus 9.6, so the mean wage is 545.2 rupees, a little below our assumed 550, just as the negative sum warned. So the lesson. Subtracting a big assumed mean turned wages in the 500s into single-digit UIs you could add on your fingers. That's the entire reason step deviation exists. Same balance point, tiny numbers. Mean known, one frequency unknown. So we run the mean formula backwards into an equation. Here the mean is handed to us and a frequency f is missing. That's a signal to write the mean formula but leave f as an unknown and solve. Start with the class marks, all midpoints, 12, 14, up to 24. Write the total frequency carrying f along. The known frequencies add to 44, so the total is 44 plus f. Now the total of products, also carrying f. The unknown class has mark 20, so it contributes 20 times f, giving 752 plus 20f. Set the mean formula equal to the given 18. This is the whole trick. A known mean turns the definition into one equation in f. Cross-multiply to clear the fraction. We can do this safely because both sides are just equal quantities. 18 times the denominator equals the numerator. Bring the f terms together and the numbers together. 20f minus 18f on one side, 792 minus 752 on the other, leaving 2f equals 40. Divide by 2. The missing frequency f is 20. So the pattern to remember, a known mean is worth exactly one equation, and one equation is enough to pin down one missing frequency. Whenever a problem gives you the average and hides a frequency, this backwards formula move is the way in. Step deviation shines here because the width is a tidy, constant 3. The classes all have width 3, so step deviation will divide out neatly and keep the UI as whole. Find the class marks first, 66.5, 69.5, on up to 84.5. Choose the assumed mean at a middle class mark, 75.5, with width 3. Picking in the middle is deliberate. It keeps the deviations small and balanced on both sides of 0. Form the UI values, the deviations divided by 3, multiply each by its frequency, and add. Because it sits in the middle, the positives and negatives nearly cancel, leaving just +4. Add the frequencies for the total, 30 women. Unscale by 3, divide by 30, and add a back on. 75.5 plus 3 times 4 over 30. That correction is a mere 0.4. So the mean heart rate is 75.9 beats per minute, barely above our well-chosen assumed mean. So a practical tip, choose A as the class mark of a middle class. That keeps the UI small and roughly balanced around 0. So their weighted sum is a tiny number and the final correction is easy. Here just 4/10 of a beat. Inclusive classes like 50 to 52. For the mean we can use their given midpoints as is, then step deviation. Notice these are inclusive classes, 50 to 52, 53 to 55, with little gaps between them. Here's a reassuring fact. For the mean, those gaps don't matter, because each class is still fairly represented by its own midpoint. So take the midpoints directly, 51, 54, 57, 60, 63. Add the frequencies for the total, 400 boxes. The midpoints step by 3, so step deviation fits. Take A equals 57 in the middle, H equals 3, form the UIs, and sum FI UI to get 25. Unscale by 3, divide by 400, add A, 57 plus 3 times 25 over 400. The correction is under a fifth, so the mean is 57.19 mangoes. So the key caution, for the mean, inclusive classes are fine exactly as given. You use the midpoints and move on. The continuity correction, shifting boundaries by half a unit, only matters for the median, and we'll see why when we get to exercise 13.3. Wide classes of 50 and 100 sized marks, step deviation shrinks them to single digits. The classes are wide, with 50, and the marks run into the hundreds, perfect conditions for step deviation, since dividing by 50 collapses everything to small integers. First the class marks, 125, 175, up to 325. Assumed mean 225 in the middle, with 50. Form the UI is -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, multiply by frequencies and add. The total is -7, so the data leans a little below our assumed mean. Add the frequencies for the total, 25 households. Unscale by 50. Divide by 25, add A, 225 plus 50 times -7 over 25. 50 times -7 over 25 is -14, so the mean expenditure is 211 rupees. So don't be thrown by that negative sum of FIUI, it simply means the data sits below the assumed mean, and the formula corrects for it automatically by subtracting. A positive sum would have pushed the mean above. The sign just tells you which way to lean. Tiny decimal classes, dividing by age clears the decimals into clean integers. This time the class marks are awkward little decimals like 0.02. Multiplying decimals by frequencies invites mistakes, so step deviation is ideal. Dividing by the width will wipe the decimals out entirely. First the class marks 0 or 2, 0 or 6, 0 1 or, and so on. Assumed mean 0.10 in the middle, with 0.04. Now watch the decimals vanish. Each UI is a deviation like minus 0.08 over 0.04, which is just minus 2, a clean integer. Multiply by frequencies and add to get minus 1. Add the frequencies for the total, 30 localities. Unscale by 0.04, divide by 30, add a 0.10 plus a tiny correction. That correction is only about minus 0.001, so the mean concentration is roughly 0.099 parts per million. So the takeaway, dividing by age didn't just shrink big numbers, this time it swept away fiddly decimals, turning them into simple integers you can add in your head. Step deviation rescues you from awkward numbers of every kind, large or small. Unequal class widths, no common age, so class marks and the direct method are the safe route. Here the class widths vary, 6, then 4, then 6 again, so there's no single width age to divide by, and step deviation loses its convenience. That's exactly when we fall back on class marks and the direct method. Find each midpoint, 3, 8, 12, 17, 24, 33, 39. Add the frequencies for the total, 40 students. Multiply each class mark by its frequency and add every product, the plain weighted total, 499. Divide by the 40 students to reach the balance point. 499 over 40 is 12.475, about 12.48 days. So the reassurance, unequal widths don't trouble the mean at all, each class is still fairly represented by its own midpoint, and the direct method just weights those midpoints. Unequal widths only rule out the step deviation shortcut, not the mean itself. Round widths of 10, step deviation once more, quick and clean. Equal with 10 and round class marks make step deviation the obvious, tidy choice. Class marks first, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Assumed mean 70, right in the middle, with 10. Centering a year keeps the deviations balanced around 0. Form the UI is -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, multiply by frequencies and add, giving -2. Add the frequencies for the total, 35 cities. Unscale by 10, divide by 35, add a, 70 plus 10 times -2 over 35. The correction is about -0.57, so the mean literacy rate is roughly 69.43%. So notice the mean landed just below our assumed 70, exactly what a small negative sum of FIUI predicts. That's the quick self-check. The sign of the sum tells you which side of the answer must fall on, before you even finish the arithmetic. Mode and mean together, to different lenses on the same patient ages. We're asked for both mode and mean, so we get to contrast them. Mode first, and step 1 is always the same. Find the model class, the tallest bar, the one with the highest frequency. 23 is the peak, so 35 to 45 is the model class. Read off the 4 things the mode formula needs: lower limit L with H, and the 3 frequencies, the peak F1 and its neighbors F0 and F2. Notice both neighbors are fairly close to the peak, so we expect only a gentle lean. Substitute. The numerator 23 minus 21 is small, the left neighbor is nearly as tall, so the mode won't move far into the class. Simplify. 2/11ths of the width 10, about 1.8, added to 35 gives a mode near 36.8 years. Now the mean for comparison. Class marks times frequencies, summed over all 80 patients. That total of products, 20/30, over 80 gives 35.37. So compare them. Mode and mean sit barely a year apart. That closeness tells you the age distribution is fairly symmetric. The most common age and the balance point age nearly coincide. When mode and mean drift far apart, that's your cue the data is skewed. A straight model class formula on component lifetimes, watch the lean. Mode again. So find the model class first, the greatest frequency. 61 is the peak, so the model class is 60 to 80. Read off L, H, and the 3 key frequencies. Look at the neighbors, 52 just before, 38 just after. The left one is much closer to the peak, so the mode should lean left, only just past 60. Substitute. The numerator 61 minus 52 is small because the left neighbor is heavy, confirming a modest lean. Simplify to 9/32 of the width 20. 9 over 32 times 20 is about 5.6, so the model lifetime is 65.6 to 5 hours. So the picture holds. The class just before the peak is much heavier than the one after, so the mode is tugged only slightly above 60. Whenever the pre-peak neighbor is close to the peak, expect the mode to sit low in the model class. The formula is just measuring that pull. Both mode and mean on family budgets, and the gap between them tells a story. Mode and mean again on the same data. Model class first, the highest frequency is 40, so 1500 to 2000 is the model class, the most common spending band. Read off L, H, and the neighbors. The left neighbor 24 is well below the peak while the right neighbor 33 is closer, so the mode should lean left, but not enormously. Substitute into the mode formula. The numerator 40 minus 24 is sizable, so we get a real lean into the class. 16/23 of the width 500 is about 348, so the model expenditure is roughly 1,847 rupees. Now the mean by step deviation over all 200 families, the balance point of the whole spread, comes to 2,662.5 rupees. So look at that gap. The mean is over 800 rupees above the mode. That's the classic signature of a right-skewed distribution. A long tail of a few high-spending families drags the average way up, even though the most typical family spends far less. Mode says typical, mean says balanced, and here they're very different. A gap of empty classes in the tail, but the model class is still perfectly clear. Don't be distracted by those empty classes with zero frequency near the end. They don't change how we find the mode. Just locate the tallest bar. The highest frequency is 10, so 30 to 35 is the modal class. Read of L, H, and the neighbors. The left neighbor 9 is almost as tall as the peak 10, so the mode should barely lean in, it'll sit very close to 30. Substitute. The numerator 10 minus 9 is just 1, a tiny lean, exactly as we predicted from the nearly equal left neighbor. 1/8 of the width 5 is about 0.6, so the mode is 30.6 to 5 students per teacher. The mean over the 35 states, using class marks, comes to about 29.22. So the interpretation, most states cluster right around 30 to 31 students per teacher, that's the mode. The average is slightly lower because a few states with very light ratios pull the balance point down. And notice the empty tail classes never troubled the mode at all, only the peak and its immediate neighbors matter. One dominant class makes the modal class obvious, and the light neighbors push the mode deep in. One class towers over the rest here, so the modal class is unmistakable, the frequency 18, at 4000 to 5000. Read of L, H, and the neighbors. Both neighbors, 4 before, 9 after, are far below the peak 18, so the numerator will be large and the mode will lean well into the class, not hug the edge. Substitute. 18 minus 4 is 14, a big gap on the left, so expect a substantial step forward. That's 14/23 of the width 1000. 14 over 23 times 1000 is about 609, so the mode is roughly 4609 runs. So notice, because the class before the peak is very light and the one after only moderate, the mode lands well inside the modal class, comfortably above its midpoint of 4500. The bigger the drop to the neighbors, the deeper into the class the mode sits, that's the lean, made numerical. The peak is a later class this time, with nearly equal neighbors. Watch where the mode settles. The tallest bar sits further along the table here, but the method never changes. Highest frequency is 20, so 40 to 50 is the modal class. Read of L, H, and the neighbors. This time the two neighbors are almost equal, 12 and 11, so the peak is nearly symmetric, and we'd predict the mode to settle close to the middle of the class. Substitute. The numerator 20 minus 12 is moderate, and with balanced neighbors the fraction should come out near a half. It's 17ths of the width 10, just under a half of the class. 8 over 17 times 10 is about 4.7, so the mode is roughly 44.7 cars. So the rule of thumb is confirmed. When the two neighbors are nearly equal, the peak isn't lopsided, and the mode settles close to the middle of the modal class, here just past 44 in a class centered on 45. Symmetric neighbors, central mode. All three central measures on one dataset, and they turn out remarkably close. This one asks for all three measures, so we get the full comparison. Median first. Unlike the mean, the median cares about position, not weight, the value with half the readings below it. So build the cumulative frequencies and find n over 2, 68 consumers, half is 34. Now walk up the cumulative column to where it first passes 34. That's where the ogive crosses the halfway line. It reaches 42 at the class 125 to 145, so that's our median class. Read off the 4 ingredients, lower limit L, the CF of the class just before, the median class's own frequency F, and the width H, that's L125, CF22, F20, H20. Substitute. We'd counted 22 before this class and need to reach 34, so we step 12 of the class's 20 readings in, and that fraction times the width lands us exactly on 137. For completeness, the mean by step deviation and the mode by the model class formula give 137.06 and 135.77. So here's the payoff. All 3 measures land within a couple of units of each other. That's the telltale signature of a nearly symmetric distribution. When mean, median, and mode almost coincide, the data is balanced, with no long tail dragging one measure away from the others. Compare that with the skewed family budget data earlier. Median given, 2 unknown frequencies, so we need 2 equations, and the data hands us both. 2 unknowns, x and y, so we hunt for 2 equations. The first is always free from the total. The known frequencies add to 45, and everything must total 60, so x plus y equals 15. The second equation comes from the given median. 28.5 lies in the class 20 to 30, so that's the median class. Read off its lower limit, frequency, and width. The cumulative frequency just before the median class carries the unknown x. It's 5 plus x. That's how the median information gets a grip on x. Substitute everything into the median formula, but now with median known and x unknown. N over 2 is 30. Subtract 20 from both sides and simplify the bracket. The 10 over 20 halves things, leaving 8.5 equals 25 minus x, all over 2. Multiply both sides by 2. 17 equals 25 minus x, so x is 8. Now back to the first equation. With x equals 8, x plus y equals 15 forces y to be 7. So the strategy for these missing frequency problems, the total gives one equation, and a known median fed backwards through its formula gives the second. 2 facts, 2 equations, 2 unknowns, always enough. It's the same backwards formula idea we used for a missing frequency with a known mean, just applied to the median. Below, data is already cumulative. Subtract to recover the ordinary frequencies, then find the middle. The below counts are already cumulative, points on the ogive. But the median formula needs the ordinary class frequencies, so subtract each running total from the next. The jump between consecutive cumulatives is how many fell in that class. That gives 2, 4, 18, and so on. Confirm the total is 100, so the middle position n over 2 is 50. Walk up the cumulative counts to where they first pass 50, the crossing point on the ogive. It reaches 78 at the class 35 to 40, so that's the median class. Read off the 4 ingredients, L35, the CF before it 45, the class frequency F33, with H5. Notice CF is already 45, so we're only 5 short of 50. Substitute. We need just 5 more of this class's 33 readings to reach the halfway mark, so we step only a small fraction in. 5 over 33 of the width 5 is about 0.76, so the median age is roughly 35.76 years. So notice why the median barely exceeds 35. The 50th policyholder falls only a fifth of the way into the 35 to 40 class, because 45 people were already below it. The closer the running total sits to n over 2 at the class boundary, the nearer the median hugs that lower limit. The formula just measures that small step in. Inclusive classes, this time, for the median, the continuity correction really is needed. Here's the case we flagged earlier, inclusive classes, with tiny gaps like the one between 126 and 127. For the mean, those gaps were harmless, but the median formula assumes the classes join up continuously. Its straight line walk across a class needs no gaps. So first shift every boundary by half a unit to close them, 117.5 to 126.5, and so on. Now build cumulative frequencies and find the middle. 40 leaves, so n over 2 is 20. Walk up to where the cumulative first passes 20. It reaches 29 at the corrected class 144.5 to 153.5, the median class. Read off the ingredients, all from the corrected boundaries, L 144.5, CF before it 17, class frequency 12, and width 9. Substitute. With 3 readings past 17 into a class of 12, so we step 3/12 of the width in. 3 over 12 of 9 is 2.25, so the median length is 146.75 millimeters. So the crucial caution to remember, for the median, the half-unit continuity correction closes the gaps between inclusive classes, so the formula's straight line assumption inside the class actually holds. Skip it and your L and H are both wrong. This is precisely the correction we said the mean could ignore but the median cannot. Large frequencies in the hundreds, but the median method is exactly unchanged. Don't be intimidated by the big frequencies. The median only cares about position, so the size of the counts changes nothing about the method. Build the cumulative column and find the middle, 400 lambs, so n over 2 is 200. Walk up to where the cumulative first passes 200. It reaches to 16 at the class 3000 to 3500, the median class. Read off L 3000, CF before it 130, class frequency 86, with 500. Substitute. We'd counted 130 and need 70 more to reach 200. Out of this class is 86 lambs. That's 70/86 of the width 500. 70 over 86 times 500 is about 407, so the median lifetime is roughly 3,407 hours. So the median lands a good way into the 3000 class, because the 200th lamp is 70 of that class's 86 lamps in, well past the halfway point of the class. The fraction 70 over 86 is exactly how far along the Ogive straight segment we traveled. Big counts, same simple idea. All 3 measures on surname lengths, a chance to see them line up almost together. All 3 measures again. Median first, it's about position, so build the cumulative frequencies and find n over 2. 100 surnames, so the middle is 50. Walk up to where the cumulative first passes 50, the Ogiv's halfway crossing. It reaches 76 at the class 7 to 10, so that's the median class. Read off L7, CF before it 36, F40, H3, and substitute. We need 14 more past 36, out of 40, so we step 14/48ths of the width 3 in, landing on 8.05. The mean, using class marks over all 100 surnames, comes to 8.32. And the mode, using that same model class 7 to 10 in the mode formula, is about 7.88. So look how tightly the three measures cluster, mode, median, and mean all within half a letter of each other. Most surnames run about 7 to 9 letters, and the near agreement of all three tells you the distribution is close to symmetric. When the three averages huddle together like this, that's your signal the data is balanced. A clean 30 students, the median sits just a small step into its class. One last median, nice and clean. Build the cumulative frequencies and find the middle, 30 students, so n over 2 is 15. Walk up to where the cumulative first passes 15. It reaches 19 at the class 55 to 60, the median class. Read off L55, CF before it 13, class frequency 6, with 5. We're only 2 short of 15, so expect a small step. Substitute. 2 more readings needed past 13, out of this class is 6. 2/6, a third, of the width 5. A third of 5 is about 1.67. So the median weight is roughly 56.67 kilograms. So the picture, the 15th and 16th students both fall in the 55 to 60 class, and since only 2 readings were needed past the boundary, the median lies just a third of the way in. The nearer the running total is to n over 2 at the boundary, the smaller that step. The median formula simply measures how far in the middle value sits. Let's lock it all in with exam-style questions before you go. And for each one I'll explain not just why the right answer is right, but why the tempting wrong ones are traps. Because in the exam it's the traps that cost marks. We're given mode and median and asked for the mean. That's the empirical relation's whole purpose. Recall 3 median equals mode plus 2 mean, which comes from the fact that for a moderately skewed curve the median sits about a third of the way from the mode toward the mean. So we don't need any table, just rearrange. Consider the 4 options. Rearrange 3 median equals mode plus 2 mean into mean equals 3 median minus mode, all over 2. That's 3 times 42, 126, minus 45, giving 81, over 2, exactly 40.5, option A. Watch the traps, 45 is just the mode copied back, and 38 and 43.5 come from dropping the factor of 3 or dividing wrong. The relation must be applied intact. The class mark is just the midpoint of the interval, the average of the lower and upper limits, because that's the single value we use to represent the whole class in the mean. Consider the 4 options. Add the 2 limits, 10 and 25, and half, 35 over 2 is 17.5, option B. The traps are the raw limits themselves, 10's near neighbor and 25, which is the exact mistake of using a class limit instead of the midpoint. And 12.5 and 15 are midpoints of the wrong intervals. Always average the 2 limits of the class you're actually given. The median class is the one where the running total, the cumulative frequency, first reaches n over 2, because that's where, on the ogive, we cross the halfway height. So first compute n over 2, then walk up the cumulative column. Consider the four options. N over 2 is 50 over 2, 25. Walk up the cumulatives, 5, 12, 25, and it first reaches 25 at the class 22, 30, option C. The trap is 10 to 20, whose cumulative is only 12, still short of 25, and 30 to 40 overshoots. It's the first class to reach n over 2 that counts, not any later one. Everything is handed to us, L, the three frequencies, and H, so just substitute into the group data mode formula, remembering the denominator is twice F1 minus F0 minus F2. Consider the four options. Mode is 20 plus, on top 12 minus 5 which is 7, over twice 12 minus 5 minus 8, that's 24 minus 13, 11, so 7 over 11, times 10. 7/11ths of 10 is about 6.36, giving 26.36, option A. The classic trap is forgetting to double F1 in the denominator, which throws you toward the other options. Twice F1, minus both neighbors, get that right and the answer follows. Think back to how each measure is built. Which one depends only on position, the middle value, rather than on the actual size of every reading? Consider the four options. The median, option B, is the middle position, so it barely notices if one value is enormous. Swap the largest reading for a billion and the middle stays put. The mean, by contrast, is a balance point that every value tugs on, so one extreme reading drags it. That's why mean is the trap here. And range and sum are the worst affected, both are defined directly by the extreme values. Position beats magnitude for robustness. 3 checks. In order, is the assertion true, is the reason true, and if both are true, does the reason actually explain the assertion? Which option is correct? The assertion is the empirical relation itself, mode equals 3 median minus 2 mean, true. The reason says the 3 averages of grouped data are tied by an empirical relation, also true. And crucially, that empirical relation I is the exact rule the assertion states, so the reason is the very explanation behind it. Both true, reason explains assertion, option A. Judge the assertion and the reason as to separate claims before you match them to an option. They need not stand or fall together. Which option is correct? The assertion, class mark equals the average of the upper and lower limits, is exactly our definition of the midpoint, so it's true. But the reason claims inclusive classes never need a continuity correction for the median, and that's false. We saw with the leaf-length problem that inclusive classes must be made continuous first, shifting boundaries by half a unit, or the medians L and H come out wrong. So assertion true, reason false, option C. Don't let a true assertion tempt you into accepting a false reason. Here's a real marks survey, the perfect chance to run all 3 measures on one dataset and watch them agree. We'll set it up once and work through mean, median, and mode together, so you see how the same table feeds all 3 formulas. The mean is the balance point, so weight each class mark by its frequency, add, and share over the 40 students. Each class is represented by its midpoint, 5, 15, 25, and so on. The class marks weighted by their frequencies total 990, and dividing that by 40 students gives a mean of 24.75 marks. The median is about position, not weight. N over 2 is 20, so build the cumulative frequencies, find the class where they first reached 20, that's the Ogilvys halfway crossing, then apply the median formula. The 20th student falls in the class 2230, and stepping 7 of that class is 15 students and gives a median of about 24.67 marks. The mode lives in the tallest bar. The frequency 15 is the highest, so 20 to 30 is the model class. Substitute it and its two neighbors into the mode formula. With the model class 2230, the mode comes out to about 24.67 as well. And notice, all three measures land right around 24.7, the clean signature of a nearly symmetric distribution. A classic board mean with class marks in the tens, step deviation keeps it tidy. A staple board question. The class marks reach 90 and the width is a constant 20, so step deviation is the tidy choice. First the midpoints, 10, 30, 50, 70, 90. Add the frequencies for the total, a clean 100, which will make the final division easy. Assumed mean 50, right in the middle, with 20. Centering a keeps the deviations balanced around 0. Form the UI is -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, multiply by frequencies then add, giving +15. Positive, so the mean will sit above 50. Unscale by 20, divide by 100, add a, 50 plus 20 times 15 over 100. 20 times 15 over 100 is 3, so the mean is 53. So the exam takeaway, step deviation turned class marks in the tens into the integers -2 through 2, so the whole weighted sum fit on one line and the arithmetic was error-proof. On a timed board paper, that tidiness is worth real marks. Cumulative frequency points straight to the median class, even with an odd count. The median is about position, so build the cumulative frequencies and find the middle. 25 students, so N over 2 is 12.5, a half, because the count is odd. Don't round it, the formula handles the half fine. Walk up the cumulatives to where they first pass 12.5. It reaches 13 at the class 50 to 55, that's the median class, the Ogilvys halfway crossing. Read off L50, CF before it 5, class frequency 8, with 5. Substitute. We need 7.5 more past 5 to reach 12.5, out of this class's 8 readings, so we step almost the whole class in. 7.5 over 8 of the width 5 is about 4.69, so the median weight is roughly 54.69 kilograms. So the point to remember, with an odd count, N over 2 comes out as a half. And that's perfectly fine. The median formula slots the middle value neatly into its class regardless. Never round N over 2 to a whole number first. Feed the half straight into the formula. The same weight data, now through the mode lens, a nice cross-check. Same data as the last question, now for the mode. So we look for the tallest bar. The highest frequency is 8, so 50 to 55 is the model class, the very same class the median fell in. Read off L, H, and the neighbors. The left neighbor 3 is well below the peak 8 while the right neighbor 6 is closer, so the mode should lean left, decently into the class. Substitute. 8 minus 3 is 5, a solid gap on the left, so a real lean forward. 5/7 of the width 5. 5 over 7 times 5 is about 3.57, so the model weight is roughly 53.57 kilograms. So here's a satisfying cross-check. Median and mode both land inside the 50 to 55 class, confirming that's exactly where the students bunch up. When two independent measures point to the same class, you can be confident you've read the data right. Before the exam, let's lock in everything from this chapter, and I'll recall each formula with the one-line reason it works, not bare, so it stays in your memory. The key formulas for mean, median and mode, the smart shortcuts, the traps that cost marks, and a memory hook to tie the three averages together. Here is the whole chapter on one card, each formula with the reason behind it. The mean has three equivalent forms, and they agree because each is just the balance point sum written from a different origin. The direct form weighs every class mark. The assumed mean form slides the 0 to a to shrink the numbers, and the step deviation form also divides by the width h to shrink them further, then multiplies h back at the end, so nothing changes. The median formula starts at the lower boundary of the median class and walks in by the fraction n over 2 minus cf over f, which is exactly how far past that boundary the middle value falls on the ogive. The mode formula uses the model class and its two neighbors because the gaps to those neighbors measure how far the peak leans toward the taller side. And the empirical relation, 3 median equals mode plus 2 mean, ties all three together for a moderately skewed distribution. Don't grind through the direct mean with huge class marks. That's where mistakes creep in. Choose an assumed mean near the middle, which slides the rulers 0 to a and shrinks every number to a small deviation. And if the classes all share one width, divide by it to get tiny integers. It works because both moves are undone at the end, add a back, multiply h back, so the balance point never actually moves. The step deviation method turns a messy sum into one you can do in your head, and that's why we reach for it whenever the numbers are big or decimal. Before you touch either formula, build the cumulative frequency column. It's the ogive in numbers. The median class is the first one whose cumulative frequency reaches n over 2, because that's where the ogive crosses the halfway height. The model class is even easier, just the tallest bar, the class with the largest frequency. Identify the right class first, then substitute. Picking the wrong class is the single biggest source of lost marks, and the cumulative column stops you guessing. If a question already hands you two of the three averages, don't waste time building a fresh table for the third. Just rearrange the empirical relation, 3 median equals mode plus 2 mean, and solve for the missing one. It holds because, for a moderately skewed curve, the median sits about a third of the way from the mode toward the mean, so the three are locked together. That makes it the genuine time saver, and often the intended shortcut in a one-mark question. A very common slip, plugging a class limit into the mean instead of the class mark. Remember why we use the midpoint. A grouped class has no single value, so we represent it by its center, where its readings sit on average. For 10 to 25, that's 17.5, not 10 or 25. Always convert to the class mark first. Using a raw limit shifts every product and quietly wrecks the whole mean. Another trap in the median formula. CF is not the frequency of the median class itself. It's the cumulative frequency of the class right before it, the running total we'd already counted when we arrived at the median class, which is what the formula subtracts to see how far further we must walk. And L is the lower boundary of that class. For inclusive classes, make them continuous first by shifting boundaries half a unit. Wrong CF or wrong L, and the whole answer is off, even if the rest of your arithmetic is perfect. Here's the one memory hook to carry into the exam. 3 median equals mode plus to mean. It's true because, for a moderately skewed distribution, the median lands about a third of the way from the mode toward the mean. Say the line once, and you can always recover whichever average is missing from the other two. No table, no fuss. In 60 seconds, the class mark is the midpoint because it represents the whole class in the mean. The mean comes 3 equivalent ways: direct, assumed mean, and step deviation, all the same balance point, just written from a shifted or scaled origin to make the arithmetic light. The median class is where the cumulative frequency first reaches n/2, the O gives halfway crossing, and the formula walks a fraction into it. The mode uses the class with the highest frequency, leaning toward its taller neighbor. Tie all 3 together with 3 median equals mode plus to mean, and you're exam ready.